The smell of roast chicken and fresh bread floated through the open door of the fancy Mozart cafe. Lin May's empty stomach growled so loudly that she pressed her thin hand against it, as if to quiet it down. 3 whole days had passed since her last real meal, just scraps and a neighbor's leftover soup that hadn't been enough to stop the hollow feeling inside her. She peeked through the cafe window, watching rich people eat without a care in the world. They talked and laughed, cutting into juicy steaks and twirling pasta around silver forks. In the corner stood the most beautiful thing Lin May had ever seen, a shiny black piano that seemed to call to her, even from outside. Lin May was 12, small for her age, with bony wrists and clothes that hung loose on her frame. Her shoes had holes that let in the cold, and her coat was missing 2 buttons, but her eyes, dark and determined, told a different story. Those eyes didn't belong to an ordinary hungry child. "Move along, girl," a man in a suit said as he pushed past her to enter the cafe. "You're blocking the entrance." Lin May didn't move. She couldn't. Not when her mother lay sick at home with nothing to eat. Not when they might lose their tiny apartment if the rent wasn't paid by tomorrow. Her father had been gone for months, not dead, but might as well have been. He sat in their apartment all day, staring at walls, barely speaking, a ghost of the man he once was. Taking a deep breath, Lin May pushed open the heavy glass door of the Mozart cafe. Warm air wrapped around her like a blanket, and for a moment, she just stood there, soaking it in. A tall man with slicked back hair and a name tag that read Henry spotted her immediately. His welcoming smile dropped when he noticed her shabby clothes. "We don't give handouts here," he said, stepping toward her. "The shelter is 3 blocks down." Lin May stood straighter, her chin up. "I'm not asking for handouts." The cafe had grown quieter. People at nearby tables were watching now, some with pity, others with annoyance at having their fancy lunch interrupted. "Then what do you want?" Henry asked, crossing his arms. Lin May's eyes darted to the piano, then back to Henry's face. "Can I play for a portion of meat?" There was a moment of silence before laughter erupted around the room. A woman in pearls nearly choked on her wine. 2 businessmen at the counter didn't even try to hide their amusement. "Can I play for a portion of meat?" A man repeated, wiping tears from his eyes. "That's a new one." Henry's lips curled into a smirk. "This isn't some street fair, kid. That piano is for professional musicians only, people who've studied at music schools their whole lives." Lin May didn't flinch. "Just 1 song. If you don't like it, I'll leave right away." More laughter followed. A woman whispered loudly to her friend, "Can you imagine? She probably doesn't even know which end of the piano to sit at." Heat crept up Lin May's neck, but she kept her eyes fixed on Henry. Behind him, a round man with a thick mustache emerged from what looked like an office. He wore an expensive suit and had a ring on every finger. "What's all this commotion, Henry?" the man asked, his voice booming across the cafe. "Nothing to worry about, Mr. Rothschild. Just a street kid wanting to play our piano for food. I was just asking her to leave." Mr. Rothschild, clearly the owner, looked Lin May up and down. Instead of immediate dismissal, something like curiosity flickered in his eyes. "You think you can play that piano, girl?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Lin May replied without hesitation. Mr. Rothschild rubbed his chin. "What's your name?" "Lin May." "Well, Lin May, that's a Steinway grand piano worth more than most houses in this town. Professional musicians book weeks in advance to perform on it." Lin May said nothing, just waited. Mr. Rothschild glanced at his customers, most of whom were watching the scene with amused interest. It wasn't often that their fancy lunch came with free entertainment. "Tell you what," he finally said with a dramatic wave of his hand. "Let her play, Henry. If nothing else, it'll give our guests something to talk about." Henry looked like he wanted to object, but stepped aside with a shrug. "Your piano, your rules." Lin May's heart pounded as she walked between the tables. People stared, some taking out phones ready to record what they assumed would be a disaster. She heard snippets of their whispers. "Poor thing probably thinks Twinkle Twinkle is a masterpiece. $10 says she can't even reach the pedals." This should be entertaining. At least, the piano bench was cold and smooth as Lin May sat down. She adjusted it slightly, her feet barely touching the pedals. The gleaming keys before her were familiar friends, the only constant in her chaotic life. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the noise of the cafe fade away. In her mind, she was back in their old apartment before everything fell apart, before her father changed. He would sit beside her at their second-hand upright piano, guiding her hands with infinite patience. "Music isn't in the fingers, Lin May," he would say. "It's in the heart. If you don't feel it here," he would tap her chest, "no one will feel it out there." Lin May opened her eyes and placed her small, cold hands on the keys. Without sheet music, without introduction, she began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor filled the cafe. Not a simplified version, not an amateur attempt. The real thing, played with the technical skill of someone who had practiced thousands of hours and the emotional depth of a soul far older than 12 years. A fork clattered onto a plate. Someone gasped. The cafe fell silent except for the music that poured from Lin May's fingers. The piece told a story, beginning soft and questioning, building gradually into passionate waves of sound that crashed and receded. Lin May's thin body swayed slightly as she played, her face transformed. No longer a hungry child begging for food, but an artist speaking a language beyond words. Mr. Rothschild's smug smile had vanished. He stood frozen by his office door, mouth slightly open. Henry the maitre d' had backed against a wall, his professional mask cracked wide open in shock. As Lin May reached the stormy middle section of the piece, her fingers flew across the keys with impossible speed and precision, the difficult runs and arpeggios, parts that made even seasoned pianists sweat. She played effortlessly, as natural as breathing. Tears began to stream down her face, but her hands never faltered. She poured everything into the music, her hunger, her mother's illness, her father's absence while present, the laughter that had greeted her request. All of it transformed into something beautiful and heartbreaking. When the final notes faded into silence, Lin May sat still, hands resting on the keys. For several seconds, nobody moved or spoke. It was as if time itself had stopped to honor what had just happened. Then, starting from the back of the room, someone began to clap. Another joined in, then another. Soon the entire cafe was on its feet in a standing ovation, the very same people who had laughed at her minutes before. Lin May turned on the bench, surprised by the reaction. A woman in an expensive dress was openly crying. Two young men who had been taking video on their phones were now staring at their screens in disbelief, replaying what they'd captured. Mr. Rothschild approached slowly, as if in a daze. Where did you learn to play like that, child?" Lin May's voice was soft but clear. "My father taught me." "And who is your father?" Henry asked, all traces of his earlier contempt gone. Lin May looked down at her worn-out shoes. "His name is Wei Zhang." A murmur rippled through the cafe. An older woman at a corner table gasped loudly and clutched her companion's arm. "Wei Zhang," she repeated. "The concert pianist? The one who disappeared from the music scene 5 years ago?" Lin May nodded, her eyes still downcast. Mr. Rothschild knelt down, bringing himself to Lin May's eye level. "Your father is Wei Zhang, the Wei Zhang who played at Carnegie Hall, who won the International Chopin competition?" "Yes," Lin May whispered. "That was before he got sick." The cafe had gone completely silent again. The revelation that this hungry child was the daughter of one of the most brilliant pianists of his generation, a man whose mysterious disappearance had been the subject of endless speculation in the music world, was almost as shocking as her playing. "Where is he now?" someone asked. Lin May's hands twisted in her lap. "At home. He doesn't play anymore. He doesn't do anything. My mother is sick and we have no money left." Mr. Rothschild stood up slowly, his face solemn. He turned to Henry. "Prepare our finest meal, enough for 3 people, to go, and call my car around." Then he looked back at Lin May with new eyes, not pitying but respectful. "You came asking to play for a portion of meat," he said. "I think we can do much better than that." Lin May's stomach growled again, but this time she didn't try to silence it. For the first time in months, she felt something like hope. Mr. Rothschild's sleek black car pulled up to a crumbling apartment building on the edge of town. Lin May clutched the warm bags of food against her chest, the delicious smell making her mouth water. She hadn't let Mr. Rothschild carry them, worried somehow that the food might disappear if it left her hands. "Is this where you live?" Mr. Rothschild asked, looking up at the peeling paint and broken windows. Lin May nodded. "Apartment 3B, it's not much, but it's home." She led the way up 2 flights of stairs that creaked under their feet. A flickering light bulb lit the hallway just enough to see the peeling wallpaper and stained carpet. Mr. Rothschild followed silently, his shiny leather shoes looking completely out of place. At the door marked 3B, Lin Mei paused. My father. He might not speak to you. Please don't take it personally. Mr. Rothschild nodded. I understand. Lin Mei took a deep breath and pushed open the unlocked door. The apartment was tiny, just one main room with a small kitchen area, plus a bathroom that was barely big enough to turn around in. A thin curtain separated a sleeping area from the rest of the space. The place was clean but sparse. No TV, no decorations, just a few pieces of worn furniture, a tiny electric heater, and a stack of books. In one corner stood an upright piano, old and scratched but clearly well cared for, the only object in the apartment that seemed to have received any attention. Mom? I'm home, Lin Mei called out. And I brought food. A weak voice answered from behind the curtain. Lin Mei? Is that you? Lin Mei rushed over, putting the food down on a small table. She pushed the curtain aside to reveal a thin woman lying on a mattress on the floor. Despite her obvious illness, the woman had a gentle beauty that matched her daughter's. Her eyes widened when she saw the cafe owner standing awkwardly in their doorway. Who is this? She asked, trying to sit up. Mom, this is Mr. Rothschild. He owns the Mozart Cafe. Lin Mei helped her mother into a sitting position. I played his piano today and he gave us food. Enough for everyone. Mrs. Zhang looked confused. You played at the cafe? But how? Your daughter has an extraordinary gift, Mr. Rothschild said, stepping forward. I've hosted professional musicians from around the world and none of them played with the heart your Lin Mei showed today. Lin Mei's mother looked at her daughter with a mix of pride and concern. You shouldn't have gone there. We would have managed somehow. We haven't eaten properly in days, Mom, Lin Mei said quietly, and the rent is due tomorrow. Mrs. Zhang closed her eyes briefly, the weight of their situation visible on her tired face. Where is your father? Lin Mei glanced toward the window where a man sat in a chair, his back to them. He hadn't moved or acknowledged their arrival. He's where he always is, Lin Mei replied. Mr. Rothschild followed her gaze to the motionless figure. Even from behind, the slumped shoulders and stillness spoke of a profound depression. So this was Wei Zhang, the brilliant pianist whose recordings Mr. Rothschild had collected, whose concerts he had attended whenever possible. The man whose mysterious disappearance from the music world 5 years ago had sparked endless speculation. Wei, Mrs. Zhang called softly. We have a visitor. The man didn't respond. It was as if he hadn't heard her at all. Lin Mei began unpacking the food, the smell filling the small apartment. She arranged it carefully on 3 plates, then approached her father. Dad, she said gently, I brought you dinner from the Mozart Cafe. Remember how you used to talk about playing there someday? For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, Wei Zhang turned his head. His face was gaunt with several days' worth of stubble. But his eyes, they were Lin Mei's eyes, deep and soulful, though now clouded with something dark. Mozart Cafe? He repeated, his voice hoarse from disuse. Lin Mei nodded. I played their piano today. The Steinway Grand. A flicker of something, confusion, disbelief, pride, crossed Wei Zhang's face. You played the Steinway? Chopin's Ballade in G minor, she said. Like you taught me. Mr. Rothschild stepped forward. Mr. Zhang, it's an honor to meet you. I've been a fan of your music for years. Your interpretation of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 changed how I listen to classical music. Wei Zhang stared at him blankly, as if the words weren't quite reaching him. Then his gaze drifted back to his daughter. Did you play well? He asked. Lin Mei smiled. I remembered everything you taught me. About feeling the music, not just playing the notes. Mrs. Zhang watched the exchange with tears in her eyes. This was the most her husband had spoken in weeks. Your daughter made an entire room of people stop eating and just listen, Mr. Rothschild said. Some of them cried. I've never seen anything quite like it. Wei Zhang's hands, once famous for their strength and dexterity, trembled slightly in his lap. You played for strangers? I played for food, Lin Mei explained simply. We needed to eat. Something shifted in Wei Zhang's expression, a flash of pain quickly followed by shame. He looked around the tiny apartment, seemingly taking in their poverty for the first time in months. Why don't we eat while the food is still warm? Mrs. Zhang suggested, trying to keep her voice light. They gathered around the small table, Lin Mei bringing her father's chair over from the window. The feast Mr. Rothschild had sent: roast chicken, buttery potatoes, fresh vegetables, and warm bread, would have been impressive anywhere. But in this bare apartment it looked like something from a dream. "Please, join us," Mrs. Zhang said to Mr. Rothschild. He shook his head. "Thank you, but this is for your family. However, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk business for a moment." Lin Mei looked up from her plate, which she'd been trying not to devour too quickly. "I'd like to offer Lin Mei a regular spot at the cafe," Mr. Rothschild said. "2 evenings a week playing for our dinner guests. With proper compensation, of course." Mrs. Zhang put down her fork. "That's very kind, but Lin Mei is only 12. She needs to focus on school, not working." "Mom," Lin Mei said softly, "we need the money. And I love playing." Wei Zhang, who had been eating mechanically, looked up. "How much?" The directness of the question surprised everyone. Mr. Rothschild named a figure that made Mrs. Zhang gasp. "That's more than I made in a month at the factory," she said. "Your daughter has a rare gift," Mr. Rothschild replied. "And my customers will pay good money to hear her play while they dine." Wei Zhang put down his spoon. His hand moved to the edge of the table, fingers positioning themselves as if on piano keys. It was an unconscious gesture, but Lin Mei noticed immediately. "Dad?" she said hopefully. Wei Zhang looked at his daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in months. "You should not have to play for food, not like a street performer." Lin Mei reached for his hand. "I didn't mind. I got to play a beautiful piano. We've reached this point because of me," Wei Zhang said, his voice strengthening. "Because I failed." "You didn't fail," Mrs. Zhang said quickly. "You got sick. That's not your fault." But Wei Zhang shook his head. "I let the pressure break me. After the bad reviews, after they called me mechanical, soulless, I believed them. I forgot why I played in the first place." He turned to Lin Mei. "But you remembered. You played for food because we were hungry. The purest reason to make music, to fill a need." Mr. Rothschild cleared his throat. "Mr. Zhang, would you consider teaching at the cafe as well? We could convert the back room into a small studio. Many parents in town would pay well for their children to learn from someone of your caliber." Wei Zhang's face clouded again. "I haven't touched a piano in months." "But you could," Lin Mei said eagerly. "Our piano still works. I keep it tuned just like you taught me." A tense silence filled the room. Lin Mei held her breath, watching her father's face. For so long he had been a ghost, present but not really there. Now for the first time she could see him struggling to return. Slowly, Wei Zhang rose from the table and walked to the upright piano in the corner. Everyone watched as he stood before it, hands hovering over the keys without touching them. "I don't know if I can," he whispered. Lin Mei joined him at the piano. Without a word, she sat down and began to play. Not a complicated piece, but a simple melody he had composed for her as a lullaby when she was small. Wei Zhang closed his eyes, swaying slightly to the gentle tune. When Lin Mei reached the middle section, she stopped abruptly and looked up at her father. After a moment's hesitation, Wei Zhang lowered himself beside her on the bench. His fingers, once so confident, now trembled as they found the keys. He picked up where she had left off, continuing the lullaby. The notes were hesitant at first, some slightly mistimed, but as he continued, his hands remembered what his mind had tried to forget. The melody grew stronger, more assured, until he was playing with a tenderness that filled the small apartment. Mrs. Zhang pressed her hands to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Rothschild stood motionless, witnessing something far more valuable than any business deal. When Wei Zhang finished the lullaby, the final notes hung in the air like a question. He turned to his daughter, a single tear tracking down his hollow cheek. "I'm so sorry, Lin Mei," he said, his voice breaking. "For everything." Lin Mei threw her arms around her father's neck. "You're still here," she whispered. "That's all that matters." Over his daughter's shoulder, Wei Zhang looked at Mr. Rothschild. "Your offer," he said. "For Lin Mei to play at the cafe. We accept, but with one condition." Mr. Rothschild raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "That I accompany her," Wei Zhang said. "Not to play, not yet, but to be there, to watch over her. No child should perform alone." Mr. Rothschild smiled. "I think we can arrange that." As night fell outside their window, the little apartment felt warmer somehow. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while it held something besides fear. Music had brought them food for tonight. Perhaps it could bring them hope for tomorrow. The Mozart Cafe buzzed with excitement. Word had spread quickly throughout the small town. The daughter of Wei Zhang would be playing tonight. People who had never set foot in the upscale cafe were lining up outside, hoping for a chance to hear the child prodigy, whose story had captivated everyone who heard it. Mr. Rothschild had transformed the cafe for the occasion. The regular tables near the piano had been rearranged to create a proper performance space. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and the Steinway grand had been polished until it gleamed under the soft lights. In the back room that would soon become a teaching studio, Lin Mei sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple blue dress, new but not flashy, that Mrs. Zhang had carefully ironed that morning. For the first time in months, Lin Mei's shoes didn't have holes and her hair was neatly brushed and tied back with a ribbon. "Nervous?" Wei Zhang asked, sitting beside his daughter. Lin Mei shook her head. "Not about playing, but..." She hesitated. "But what? What if they only came because they heard the story? About us being poor and me playing for food? What if they're just curious, not really interested in the music?" Wei Zhang considered this. He looked better than he had a week ago when Mr. Rothschild first visited their apartment. He had shaved and some color had returned to his face. His eyes, though still carrying shadows of his depression, were clearer now, more present. "Their reasons for coming don't matter," he said finally. "What matters is what they feel when they leave. Music has that power, to change why people came into why they stay." He took his daughter's hand. "Do you remember what I always told you about performing?" Lin Mei nodded. "Play for yourself first. If the music moves you, it will move others." "Exactly." Wei Zhang's voice grew stronger. "Tonight, don't play for the audience or for Mr. Rothschild or even for our family. Play for yourself, for the joy of it." A soft knock interrupted them. Mrs. Zhang peeked in, looking healthier than she had in weeks. The regular meals and reduced stress had already made a difference. "It's time," she said. "The cafe is completely full. There are even people standing outside listening through the open windows." Lin Mei took a deep breath and stood up. As she walked toward the door, she noticed her father wasn't following. "Aren't you coming?" she asked, suddenly anxious. "You said you'd be there." Wei Zhang looked torn. "I will watch from here, through the doorway. I'm not ready to be seen." Lin Mei's face fell. "But Dad, we agreed." "You said no child should perform alone." "Lin Mei," her mother said gently, "your father needs time. This is already a big step." But Lin Mei stood her ground, a stubbornness in her expression that reminded Wei Zhang startlingly of himself at her age. "You taught me that promises matter," she said quietly. "You promised you would be there." Wei Zhang closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. "You're right." He stood up slowly. "I'll sit at the side away from the spotlight, but I'll be there." The crowd fell silent as Lin Mei walked to the piano, her father following a few steps behind. Whispers rippled through the room as people recognized Wei Zhang, many seeing him for the first time in years. He kept his eyes down, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, and took a seat in the shadows to the left of the piano. Mr. Rothschild stepped forward to introduce them, but kept it mercifully brief. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to present Lin Mei Zhang." Lin Mei bowed slightly, then sat at the piano. The silence in the cafe was complete. No clinking glasses, no whispered conversations. Everyone waited. Lin Mei glanced at her father, who gave her a small nod. Then she began to play. She started with Debussy's Clair de Lune, her small hands moving delicately across the keys, creating sounds like moonlight on water. The piece was deceptively difficult, requiring a light touch and perfect control, but Lin Mei played it as naturally as if she were simply speaking. From his seat in the shadows, Wei Zhang watched his daughter with growing amazement. Her technique was flawless, yes, but it was her musicality that struck him most deeply. She played with a maturity that many adult pianists never achieved, finding nuances in the music that he himself had struggled to express. When she finished the Debussy, the audience erupted in applause. Lin Mei smiled shyly, waiting for the noise to die down before beginning her next piece, a lively Schubert impromptu that displayed her technical abilities. Her fingers danced across the keys with remarkable speed and precision, bringing smiles to many faces in the audience. As the evening continued, Lin Mei played pieces of increasing difficulty, each one received with greater enthusiasm than the last. Mr. Rothschild stood by the door, beaming with pride as if she were his own child. For her final scheduled piece, Lin Mei turned slightly on the bench to address the audience, the first time she had spoken all evening. "For my last piece," she said, her voice clear but soft, "I'd like to play something special. This is a composition my father wrote for me as a lullaby when I was very small." She began the gentle melody that Wei Jiang had played in their apartment a week ago, the same, one that had brought him back to the piano after months of silence. It was a simple piece on the surface but filled with complex emotions, love, protection, hope, and a touch of melancholy. As Lin Mei played, many in the audience were moved to tears by its beauty. When the final notes faded away, there was a moment of complete silence before the cafe erupted in a standing ovation. Lin Mei stood and bowed, her cheeks flushed with happiness. As the applause continued, she turned and walked to where her father sat. She held out her hand to him. Wei Jiang shook his head slightly, panic flashing in his eyes. "Please," she whispered. "They want to thank you too. The music was yours." Wei Jiang hesitated, then slowly took his daughter's hand and stood up. As he stepped forward into the light, the applause grew even louder. Someone called out, "Welcome back, maestro," and several others echoed the sentiment. For a moment, Wei Jiang looked as if he might retreat back into the shadows. Then his daughter squeezed his hand and something in his posture changed. He lifted his chin and acknowledged the audience with a small bow. Mr. Rothschild approached the piano, waiting for the applause to die down. "Ladies and gentlemen, what a privilege we've had tonight. I'm sure you'll agree that Lin Mei's talent is extraordinary. She will be playing here regularly from now on and—" He paused, glancing at Wei Jiang. "Well, I don't want to promise too much, but perhaps someday we might persuade her father to join her for a duet." The suggestion brought another round of enthusiastic applause. Wei Jiang didn't respond, but he didn't outright reject the idea either, which, for those who knew him, was progress. As the formal performance ended and the cafe returned to its normal function as a restaurant, people approached Lin Mei to congratulate her. Some asked for autographs, which made her giggle. A few brave souls ventured to speak to Wei Jiang as well, telling him how much they had missed his music. One elderly woman clasped his hand tightly. "My husband and I saw you play in New York 10 years ago. Your Chopin brought him to tears. He passed away last year, but he kept your recordings by his bed until the end." Wei Jiang, clearly uncomfortable but trying, nodded politely. "Thank you for telling me," he managed to say. Later, as the crowd thinned, a well-dressed woman approached Lin Mei and her parents. "Excuse me," she said. "My name is Isabella Montgomery. I was your father's agent before." Wei Jiang stiffened, recognition and wariness crossing his face. Isabella smiled gently. "It's been a long time, Wei. You look well." "I don't," he said flatly. "But I'm better than I was." She nodded, accepting this. "I came as soon as I heard the rumors. A child prodigy in a small-town cafe, playing Wei Jiang's compositions. I had to see for myself." She turned to Lin Mei. "You have a remarkable gift, young lady." "Thank you," Lin Mei replied politely. Isabella hesitated, then continued. "I know this might be premature, but I'd like to discuss possibilities for your future. There are competitions, scholarships, doors I could help open." Mrs. Zhang stepped closer to her daughter protectively. "Lin Mei is only 12. We're not looking to push her into the spotlight." "Of course not," Isabella said quickly. "I made that mistake once before." She glanced meaningfully at Wei Jiang. "I've learned a lot since then about balancing opportunity with well-being. But talent like hers deserves nurturing beyond what even the most devoted parents can provide alone." Wei Jiang had been silent, but now he spoke up. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Nothing immediate," Isabella replied. "For now, just a conversation about options. Private tutors, perhaps, access to better instruments. Eventually, carefully selected performance opportunities, but only when she's ready, and only if she wants them." Lin Mei looked at her father, waiting for his reaction. Wei Jiang's face showed a complex mix of emotions. Distrust, interest, fear, hope. "We nearly lost everything because of that world," he said quietly. Isabella nodded. "I know, and I'm sorry for my part in that. But Lin Mei isn't you, Wei, and the world doesn't have to devour her talent. Not if we're careful. Not if we remember why we make music in the first place." Lin Mei touched her father's arm. "What was your reason, Dad? Before everything happened, why did you play?" The question seemed to catch Wei Jiang by surprise. He thought for a long moment before answering. Because when I played, he said slowly, I felt most alive, most connected to something larger than myself. He looked at his daughter. But somewhere along the way I started playing for the wrong reasons, for praise, for status, for money. And now? Lin Mei asked. Wei Jiang looked around the cafe, at the people still lingering to catch a glimpse of them, at the piano standing proudly in the corner, at Mr. Rothschild chatting animatedly with some customers. Now, he said, I think I'd like to play again, not for an audience, just for myself, and maybe, he hesitated, maybe someday, to play with you. Lin Mei's face lit up with a smile so bright it seemed to fill the room with warmth. I'd like that, she said. I'd like that very much. 3 months had passed since Lin Mei's first performance at the Mozart Cafe. Spring had arrived, bringing with it new beginnings in more ways than one. The Jiang family no longer lived in the tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper. They had moved to a modest but comfortable house near the edge of town, with a yard where Mrs. Jiang had planted flowers that were just beginning to bloom. Most importantly, the living room was large enough for not one, but 2 pianos, Lin Mei's beloved upright from their old apartment, and a beautiful baby grand on loan from a music foundation that Isabella had connected them with. Lin Mei had just returned from school and was practicing a particularly difficult passage from a Liszt piece when her father entered the room. Wei Jiang looked like a different man now. Still thin but healthy, with clear eyes and purposeful movements. He carried a stack of mail, which he set down on a side table before listening to his daughter play. Lin Mei finished the passage and looked up. How was that? Better, Wei Jiang said. But you're rushing the middle section. Remember, even in the fastest passages, each note needs space to breathe. Lin Mei nodded and tried again, this time slowing down just enough to give each note its proper weight. The difference was subtle but significant. Yes, Wei Jiang said, a small smile appearing. Much better. Lin Mei beamed at the praise. These moments with her father, just the 2 of them sharing music, were precious beyond words. For so many years he had been her hero, then her teacher, then a ghost haunting their home. Now he was becoming something new. Still her teacher, yes, but also her partner in music. There's something here for you, Wei Jiang said, picking up an envelope from the stack of mail. From the Young Musicians Foundation. Lin Mei took the envelope with trembling fingers. She had applied for their summer program 3 weeks ago at Isabella's suggestion. The application had included recordings of her playing, letters of recommendation, and an essay about what music meant to her. Should I open it now? She asked. Wei Jiang nodded. Your mother will be home soon. She'd want to be here, but, he shrugged, I don't think either of us can wait. Lin Mei carefully tore open the envelope and pulled out a letter on thick, cream-colored paper. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, then grew wide. I got in, she whispered, with a full scholarship. Wei Jiang's face showed a complicated mix of pride, excitement, and something like fear. That's wonderful news. They say I'll be studying with Professor Chen. Lin Mei kept reading, her voice rising with excitement. And there's a concert at the end where we each perform with a full orchestra. Wei Jiang took the letter and read it for himself. The program was prestigious. Only 12 young pianists from across the country had been accepted. It would mean Lin Mei spending 6 weeks of her summer in a city 4 hours away, living in a dormitory with the other students, immersed in intensive study. Do you want to go? He asked, watching her face carefully. Lin Mei didn't answer immediately. 6 weeks seemed like a long time to be away from home, especially now that things were finally getting better for their family. But the opportunity to study with Professor Chen, to play with an orchestra. Yes, she said finally. I think I do, but what? Will you be okay? If I'm gone for that long? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. They both knew what she was really asking. Would he slip back into depression without her there? Would the fragile progress he'd made collapse in her absence? Wei Jiang knelt down so his eyes were level with hers. Lin Mei, listen to me. I will miss you terribly. But you must never make decisions about your future based on fear of what might happen to me. That's not your responsibility. But no, he said firmly. For too long you've had to be stronger than any child should need to be. You played for food when I couldn't provide. You kept our family together when I was lost. Now it's time for you to just be a young musician learning and growing. Tears filled Lin May's eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of being away from home. Of not being good enough, of—" She hesitated. "Of turning into what you were afraid of becoming. Someone who plays for the wrong reasons." Wei Jiang was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "Those are wise fears," he said finally. "The fact that you have them tells me you'll be all right." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I have something that might help." He went to the bookshelf and pulled out an old leather journal. "I started keeping this when I was not much older than you are now. My teacher gave it to me when I began entering competitions." He handed the journal to Lin May. She opened it carefully, finding pages filled with her father's handwriting, some in Chinese, some in English, all in the slightly messy scrawl she recognized from the notes he used to write on her sheet music. "What is it?" she asked, flipping through the pages. "A record of my journey," Wei Jiang explained. "Not just the music I was playing or the techniques I was learning, but how I felt about it all. My doubts, my fears, my moments of joy." He pointed to one of the entries. "This was after my first international competition. I was 16 and terrified." Lin May read the passage, smiling at her father's teenage anxieties. So similar to her own. "Keep reading," he encouraged. She turned more pages, watching her father's thoughts evolve from those of an eager young student to a rising star, then to an established performer dealing with the pressures of fame. She could see the exact moment when things began to change, when the joy in his words dimmed, replaced by anxiety about critics, comparisons to other pianists, worries about ticket sales and recording contracts. "You can see where I lost my way," Wei Jiang said quietly. Lin May nodded, still reading. "You stopped writing about how the music made you feel. You only wrote about what others thought of your playing." "Exactly." Wei Jiang took the journal back and flipped to the last written page. "This was my final entry the night before my last public concert. The one where I froze on stage and couldn't play." Lin May had heard about that night from her mother, how her father had walked onto the stage at Carnegie Hall, sat at the piano, placed his hands on the keys, and then nothing. After 10 excruciating minutes, he had stood up, bowed to the bewildered audience, and walked off stage. He never performed in public again. Lin May read the final entry. "I no longer hear the music. I only hear the judgment that will follow. My fingers move, but my heart is silent. Tomorrow, 1,500 people will watch me perform, but I will be alone on that stage, more alone than I have ever been." "That's so sad," Lin May whispered. Wei Jiang nodded. "Yes, but look at the blank pages that follow." He flipped through the empty second half of the journal. "I stopped writing because I stopped playing. But now—" He pulled a pen from his pocket and wrote a new date at the top of the next blank page. Today's date. Below it, he wrote, "Today my daughter was accepted into the Young Musicians Foundation summer program. I am terrified and overjoyed for her. Terrified because I know the path is not easy. Overjoyed because when she plays I can hear her heart in every note. I am finding my way back to music through her joy, remembering why we play in the first place, not for applause or acclaim, but for that moment when the music takes you somewhere words cannot reach." He handed the pen to Lin May. "I think this journal should continue its journey with you. Write in it when you're at the summer program. Write about the music, yes, but more importantly, write about how it makes you feel. And when you read back over my earlier entries, learn from my mistakes." Lin May took the pen, overwhelmed by the gift. "I don't know what to say." The front door opened and Mrs. Zhang called out, "I'm home." She entered the living room, still wearing her work uniform from the cafe where she now managed the morning shift. Mr. Rothschild had offered her the position once her health improved, insisting that her organizational skills were exactly what the place needed. "What's going on?" she asked, noticing the opened letter and the serious faces of her husband and daughter. "Lin May has been accepted to the summer program," Wei Jiang said, "with a full scholarship." Mrs. Zhang's tired face broke into a wide smile. "Oh, my darling, that's wonderful." She hugged Lin May tightly, then noticed the journal. "What's this?" "Dad's giving me his journal to take with me," Lin May explained, "to help me remember why I'm playing." Mrs. Zhang looked at her husband with surprise and something like pride. The journal had been private, something he guarded closely even during their early years of marriage. "That's a precious gift," she said softly. Wei Jiang nodded. "She'll need it. The path she's choosing isn't easy." Are you sure you want to go, Lin Mei? Mrs. Zhang asked. 6 weeks is a long time. I think I do, Lin Mei said. But I'll miss you both so much. And my performances at the cafe? Mr. Rothschild will understand, her mother assured her. He's your biggest fan, you know. He's already planning a special concert when you return, to show everyone what you've learned. Lin Mei hadn't thought about that, coming back with new skills, new repertoire, perhaps even playing with more confidence and maturity. The idea excited her. There's something else I've been thinking about, Wei Zhang said, looking slightly nervous. While Lin Mei is away, I might try playing at the cafe. Not a formal concert, he added quickly. Just playing again in front of others. Both Lin Mei and her mother stared at him in shock. He hadn't performed for an audience even informally since his breakdown 5 years ago. Wei, are you sure? Mrs. Zhang asked gently. He shrugged. No, but I think it's time to try. Lin Mei will be facing her fears this summer. Perhaps I should face mine as well. Lin Mei threw her arms around her father. Oh, Dad. That's the best news of all. As the family talked excitedly about the summer ahead, Lin Mei felt a strange mix of emotions, anticipation, fear, excitement, and a deep gratitude for how far they had all come since that desperate day when she had asked to play for a portion of meat. She opened her father's journal again and wrote her first entry beneath his. Today I was accepted to the summer program. I'm scared but excited. Most of all, I'm thankful. 3 months ago we were hungry and hopeless. Now we have music in our lives again. Not just notes on a page, but real music that feeds the soul even better than food feeds the body. Dad says he might play at the cafe while I'm gone. I think the audience will weep with joy when they hear him. I know I always do. The Mozart Cafe had been transformed. Mr. Rothschild had outdone himself for what everyone in town was calling the event of the year. The usual tables had been cleared away to make room for rows of chairs facing the grand piano. Black and white decorations adorned the walls, and a small string ensemble from the local music school was setting up in the corner. Mrs. Zhang flitted nervously from one task to another, checking the flowers, straightening programs, and greeting early arrivals with a warm smile that couldn't quite hide her anxiety. This wasn't just any concert. This was Lin Mei's triumphant return performance after her 6 weeks at the Young Musicians Foundation summer program. More importantly, it would be the first time Wei Zhang would perform in public alongside his daughter since his breakdown 5 years ago. Everything looks wonderful, Isabella said, appearing at Mrs. Zhang's side. You've done an amazing job. Thank you, Mrs. Zhang replied, smoothing her dress for the 10th time. I just want everything to be perfect for them. Isabella squeezed her arm. It already is. The rest is up to the music. In the back room that had once been Mr. Rothschild's office and was now a fully functional music studio, Lin Mei sat quietly, reading the latest entry in her father's journal. She had grown taller over the summer, and there was a new confidence in the way she held herself. Her experiences at the summer program had changed her in subtle but important ways. The door opened and Wei Zhang entered, dressed in a simple black suit. He looked nervous but composed. Almost time, he said, sitting next to his daughter. How are you feeling? Lin Mei closed the journal. Ready, I think. She paused. Dad, are you sure about the last piece? We could still change it if... No, Wei Zhang said firmly. It's the right choice. He took a deep breath. When I was at my lowest, I thought I would never play that piece again. That I couldn't. But now... He looked at his daughter with a small smile. Now I want to reclaim it. With you, Lin Mei nodded, understanding the significance. The last piece they would play tonight was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, arranged for 2 pianos instead of piano and orchestra. It was the same piece Wei Zhang had been scheduled to play the night of his disastrous final concert, when he had frozen on stage and walked away from his career. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Mr. Rothschild poked his head in. 5 minutes, he said. The place is packed. There are even people standing outside listening through the windows. He beamed at them. Just like the first time, eh, Lin Mei? Lin Mei smiled at the memory. How far they had come from that desperate day when she had asked to play for food. As Mr. Rothschild left, Wei Zhang pulled something small from his pocket. I have something for you, he said. A good luck charm. He opened his palm to reveal a small wooden carving of a piano. My father gave this to me before my first concert, he explained. I carried it with me for every performance until—" He trailed off, then continued, "until I started caring more about impressing critics than honoring his memory." Lin Mei took the tiny carving, running her finger over its smooth surface. "It's beautiful. My father was a carpenter, not a musician," Wei Zhang said. "He worked extra jobs to pay for my first piano lessons. He never lived to see me perform on a real concert stage, but he believed in my gift more than anyone." He closed his daughter's fingers around the carving. "Now I want you to carry it." Lin Mei's eyes filled with tears. "I wish I had known him." "He would have adored you," Wei Zhang said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not because of how well you play, but because of who you are, your kindness, your determination, your heart." Another knock, more insistent this time. Mrs. Zhang opened the door. "It's time," she said. Lin Mei tucked the wooden piano into her dress pocket and stood up. She took her father's hand. Together, they walked down the hallway toward the sound of murmuring voices. As they stepped onto the small stage, the audience burst into applause. Lin Mei recognized many faces: her teachers, neighbors, classmates, and of course the regular customers of the Mozart Cafe, who had supported her from the beginning. In the front row sat her mother Isabella and Professor Chen, who had made the long trip to hear his summer student perform. Mr. Rothschild stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special evening. As many of you know, just 6 months ago, a hungry young girl walked into my cafe and asked if she could play for food." He paused as several people nodded, remembering the story. What we didn't know then was that we were witnessing the beginning of not one, but 2 remarkable journeys. He gestured toward Lin Mei and her father. "Tonight we are privileged to hear Lin Mei Zhang, fresh from her summer at the prestigious Young Musicians Foundation program, where she was named the Outstanding Student of the Year." More applause followed. "And for the first time in 5 years, we will also hear her father, the incomparable Wei Zhang, whose return to the piano has been nothing short of miraculous." The applause grew louder. Wei Zhang looked uncomfortable with the attention but managed a small bow. "Without further ado," Mr. Rothschild concluded, "I present to you Lin Mei and Wei Zhang." Father and daughter took their places, Lin Mei at the grand piano, Wei Zhang at a smaller piano position so they faced each other. They had planned the program carefully. Lin Mei would play 2 pieces alone, showcasing what she had learned over the summer. Then Wei Zhang would play 2 pieces. Finally, they would play together. Lin Mei began with Bach's Prelude in C major, deceptively simple on the surface but requiring perfect control and sensitivity. She played it flawlessly, each note crystal clear yet flowing like water. She followed with a Chopin etude that displayed her technical growth, her small hands now capable of stretches that would have been impossible months ago. When she finished, she stood and bowed as the audience applauded enthusiastically. Then she took a seat off to the side, and all eyes turned to her father. Wei Zhang sat motionless at the piano for a long moment. Lin Mei could see the rapid rise and fall of his chest. He was nervous, perhaps even fighting the old panic. She held her breath. Then he placed his hands on the keys and began to play Debussy's Reverie, a gentle piece full of dreamy harmonies. His touch was tentative at first, but as the music flowed, his confidence grew. By the time he began his second piece, Mozart's Sonata in A major, he was fully immersed in the music, his body swaying slightly, his face peaceful. Lin Mei watched her father with tears in her eyes. This was how she remembered him from her early childhood. Not the broken man who had retreated from the world, but the passionate musician whose playing could make people forget to breathe. When Wei Zhang finished the Mozart, the audience erupted in applause and cheers. Several people rose to their feet, including Professor Chen and Isabella. Wei Zhang looked stunned by the reaction, blinking rapidly as if waking from a dream. Now came the moment they had prepared for. Lin Mei joined her father at the grand piano, sitting beside him on the bench. They would play a duet version of Schubert's Fantasia in F minor, a complex piece requiring perfect coordination between 2 pianists. As they began to play, something magical happened. Father and daughter seemed to breathe as one, their hands moving across the shared keyboard in perfect harmony. There was no need for visual cues or nods. They simply knew when the other would breathe, when to surge forward or pull back. The audience sat spellbound. Mrs. Zhang was openly crying now, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Even Mr. Rothschild wiped away a tear or two. When they finished the Schubert, Lin Mei and Wei Zhang stood and bowed together. The applause was thunderous, but they weren't done yet. They moved to their separate pianos for the final piece, their arrangement of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. This was Wei Zhang's demon to face, the piece that had defeated him years ago. The opening chords, dark, powerful, almost ominous, rang out from Wei Zhang's piano. Lin Mei watched him carefully, ready to support if needed. But there was no hesitation in his playing now, no fear. Each chord seemed to release years of pent-up emotion. As the piece progressed, the two pianos conversed, argued, then reunited in passages of heart-stopping beauty. The famous melody of the second movement, one of the most beloved in classical music, soared from Lin Mei's piano, answered and amplified by her father's. By the time they reached the triumphant finale, many in the audience were weeping openly. The final chords echoed through the cafe, then faded to silence. For a moment no one moved or spoke. Then the audience rose as one, applauding, cheering, some calling bravo. Lin Mei and Wei Zhang stood and bowed, hands clasped tightly together. As they took their third bow, Wei Zhang did something unexpected. He gestured for silence, and gradually the applause died down. "Thank you," he said, his voice shaky but clear. "6 months ago, my daughter walked into this cafe and asked to play for food because our family was hungry." He paused, gathering himself. What she received was much more than a meal. She received a chance, a new beginning, for herself and ultimately for me. He looked at Lin Mei with such love that she felt her heart might burst. "I lost my way as a musician because I forgot why we play. I played for acclaim, for perfection, for others' approval. My daughter reminded me that we play because we must, because music feeds the soul when nothing else can." Wei Zhang turned back to the audience. "Tonight I am announcing the creation of the Zhang Music Foundation, which will provide instruments and lessons to children who otherwise could not afford them. No child with the desire to make music should ever have to play for food again." Isabella stood up, clearly surprised by the announcement. "Wait, are you sure?" He nodded. "I've made arrangements with my old record company. They're re-releasing my recordings with proceeds going to the foundation." He smiled slightly. Apparently there's still a market for them. The audience applauded this news, but Wei Zhang raised his hand again. "There's one more thing." He turned to Lin Mei. "My daughter has been invited to play with the National Youth Orchestra this winter. It's a tremendous honor, and she has decided to accept." Lin Mei stared at her father in shock. She had received the invitation letter yesterday, but hadn't told anyone yet, not even her parents. She had been afraid to bring it up, worried about being away from home again, about leaving her father. Wei Zhang smiled at her confusion. "Yes, I found the letter. And before you worry about leaving us again, don't. Your mother and I will be at every performance. I've been invited to serve as a guest conductor for 2 of the concerts." Fresh applause filled the cafe. Lin Mei felt dizzy with happiness. So much had changed in just 6 months, from hunger and hopelessness to this moment of complete fulfillment. As they took their final bow, Lin Mei felt the small wooden piano in her pocket. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, about hunger and music and healing, about a desperate child asking to play for a portion of meat, and a broken man finding his way back to himself through his daughter's courage. Most of all, she thought about how sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the most beautiful music, if only we have the courage to keep playing.